Hello and welcome to the Michael Harding podcast. You're very welcome. Well, more experiments. I want to read you to start with a column I wrote this time last year. It was published, I think, this very day last year in November. And I want to talk about it then, but the column is like this. I was dragging a magnolia tree in a large pot across the backyard like an angry serial killer trying to dispose of a body when the general arrived. "I needed to see you before we're all locked up again," he said. And he wanted to know what I was doing. I said, "I'm going to plant a tree." But he said, "You have enough trees, why would you want another one?" Planting a tree, I said, is a small ritual of hope. And I need my little rituals, especially now that winter is here and COVID is still around. Rituals are like train tracks. They carry me through the winter. Getting up early in the morning or walking around the garden at lunchtime or turning on the television and slumping on the sofa each evening, they're more than just habits. They're conscious rituals. They mark my relationship with the flow of life. Putting a vase of flowers in the window or lighting a candle at the dinner table or even lighting a candle beside a photograph of a loved one who has passed away. They're all rituals to protect me against despair. I'm over 65. I got the flu injection last week and I stay at home. No one can say what the winter will bring, but rituals have a singular capacity to dissolve fear. I might not bless myself with holy water when I go out the door because I don't have a water font, but I always reach out to touch the apple tree when I pass it. And it feels like giving and receiving a blessing. And I never pass the cat without saying hello, acknowledging his presence with a pat on the head. So I'm hoping that the ritual of planting the magnolia tree will comfort me in the winter. Last spring, the garden felt like a kind of triumph over COVID. The days got longer and the air got cleaner and roses more juicy, and I forgot about the virus. Now the evenings are shorter, the mornings colder, and rough winds shake the beech trees as purple clouds sweep across the lake. Death and darkness creep further into the garden every evening, and the spectre of COVID has grown larger. But the tree that broke my heart was the magnolia. I found it 2 years ago in the corner of a garden centre being sold off for cheap, and I associate its petals with the wings of a swan. I imagined myself on the distant future, sitting beneath it in the full fragrance of joy. I brought it home and tried it out in various positions, but I never found the right spot, and it ended up in the corner of the yard, still in its pot, where nobody noticed it, and when I went off to the seaside in August, it fell over, abandoned and unloved, as its leaves turned brown. So now the tree appears to represent my own ruination, or the ruination of the world, the withering economy, the abandoned villages across the country, the choking of Leitrim beneath the shadow of Sitka forests. Every cosmic ruination seems to be gathered up in that sad and fallen tree. I know it's all an emotional project, but the wounds of the magnolia tree reflect my own heart's invisible wounds. And it's funny how my first reaction was anger. I wanted to kick it, but I didn't. Instead, I pruned it and dug a hole and planted it close to my window where I can see it. And I will watch it wither. I won't be afraid to embrace the loss of every leaf. I'll watch as it gathers frost or rain or snow or whatever the winter brings, and I will speak to it every morning when I'm on my ritual walk across the garden, whispering assurances to its dead leaf that all will be well. Because no matter what else happens in the world or in my life or in the tragedy of the pandemic, I believe my magnolia tree will grow new shoots again next spring. It will be born again, as perfectly beautiful as it once was in Northern Europe 100 million years ago. I know its fruity fragrance will scatter on the wind, and as it did long ago, long even before bees existed, there was magnolia trees, which is why the magnolia tree needs to entice beetles for pollination. Isn't that amazing? And just being close to it each day will be my winter ritual. Okay, well, that's what I wanted to share with you. Now, that's a column I wrote this time last year, and I was suffering. I'd just come out of hospital, and I didn't realise it, but I hadn't been cured. In fact, my health was getting worse, really going to be bad unless I had a further operation. So I didn't know that, but I knew I was in bad form. And in the darkness of winter, in the darkness of November, you can get into a really bad state where you're not feeling good in yourself. And that's the way I was last year. And what brought me through it was ritual. Now, one example of who I am is that I wrote that in the paper because just before I planted the tree, I got the idea of telling the story in a column. And then I thought it'd be better to go in and tell the story before you forget it. Like write it down, get the whole thing done, the column, and you can plant it in the morning, tomorrow morning. So I wrote the column, said I had planted the tree, but I hadn't planted it. So I was talking the talk, but I didn't actually walk the walk. I didn't dig the dig. I didn't do what I said I had done. I felt bad, and that's the way it gets sometimes. You let yourself down when you're not in good form. I wanted to share that with you because the podcast, the meditation or reflection that I've done this week is the start of, I'll do 3 or 4, be like November reflections. And the thing I want to talk about in it doesn't make sense unless I read you this. So I thought I'll read you this and put that up first. And then I hope you enjoyed the podcast, the sound podcast, when it goes up on the website. And the other thing I want to talk about then is the whole thing of ritual, because ritual, I really feel personally, is what kept me going last year when I was fairly ill. And there's ways to make small rituals. There's ways to change your habits into rituals. And then that transforms the way that you're engaging with the world. And it's just, it's my story. It's what I have experienced as very helpful last year. And so I'd like to share it with you. I was talking, for example, like a cup of tea is a habit. But if you make it a ritual, then it's a different thing. And the Japanese have a tea ceremony, which is a very high cultural ritual. But even me making a cup of tea can turn into a ritual. And when you have a ritual, that becomes a lens into the present moment. It's like, I do this every day. And it's the same thing every day, at the same time. And it becomes like a rhythm that repeats itself and therefore has a kind of permanence about it. And you begin to see the present moment through that ritual. So that's what this week's podcast is about. And I hope you enjoy it. and thank you for being here. Bye bye.